This is the most radical technology we'll ever see. Quantum is such a radical technology. I'm a big believer that everything is about to change.
Just the fact that Europe is putting a lot of public money into this doesn't mean that it can match up to the deep pockets in the US when we talk about private money.
This does sound like it could be out of a Star Trek episode or something.
Europe is a savings-rich continent, but that money is going to the US to invest maybe in companies that ultimately are buying European startups.
Hey, and welcome to The Dip, your favorite podcast for global money stories. I'm Cassandra.
And I'm Steven, and today we are at the Berlin Global Dialogue. That's essentially a big gathering of international politicians and business leaders.
You'll notice that Daniel isn't here with us today, but that's because he did not listen to TLC, and he is in fact chasing waterfalls, but he's going to be back with us next week.
I'll do my best to fill in. Later on the episode, I will have an interview with Nadia Calviño. She's head of the European Investment Bank, and we'll ask her if Europe can ever hope to match the gobs of money that the US or China are throwing at big tech solutions like AI, quantum computing, for example.
But speaking of future tech, we're looking today at quantum computing. When it comes to businesses, it has the power to overhaul processing power, enhance the speed and efficiency of AI and algorithms, and revolutionize encryption. But it also poses a threat to current encryption infrastructure. With a lot on the line, we turn to Haim Israel. He is with us from Bank of America today. Haim, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Now, you're the global strategist and head of thematic investing at Bank of America, and we really wanted to know from you today, because Google is making headlines this week with what it calls a breakthrough in quantum computing. What do you make of this development?
We're getting very close to what used to be the ChatGPT moment on steroids for quantum computing. Remember, 2.5 years ago, we all woke up one day, December 2022, the world have changed with ChatGPT. We are getting to this moment again with quantum computing. It's going to happen in the next 2-3 years maximum. But if the world have changed with the ChatGPT moment, this is going to be a ChatGPT moment on steroids.
Wow.
Google announcement from this week is just another step or another announcement of a series of announcements that we just seen recently. It's actually started with Google roughly give or take a year ago when they've announced their Willow chip, which their quantum Willow chip at the time made more calculations in 5 minutes than the fastest supercomputer on the planet will make in 10 decillion years. 10
Wow.
in the power of 25.
Wow.
Yes, so in 5 minutes. And that was the first breakthrough, and we got many, many breakthroughs. After that, this week's announcement is just one more step in the way.
Haim, this is a scale that I think for many of our listeners is probably hard to imagine.
Right.
We understand that quantum computing is on a different level, that it's a supercomputer. What does that mean in terms of concrete use cases? What does it mean for someone who's not paying attention to the industry itself?
It means that everything is about to change big time. Now, we have to understand first and foremost that quantum computing are not your classical computers. We will not use it. We will not have it on this.
It's not going to be like this computer.
It's not going to be like this computer. You're not going to play FIFA on it. It's not going to run your Excel. It's not going to send you emails.
Dang.
We are talking about machines which are working on a very different level and designed for very different kind of calculations, very complex calculations that today normal computers cannot do. This is the reason why governments are investing so much money trying to get their hands on it, because this is the most radical technology we'll ever see. Governments that get to this breakthrough moment will have huge advantages in everything.
This sounds like a national security issue, but is it also a business case? What is the business case for quantum computing?
So think about drug developments today. So today, if you want to develop a drug, it's 10 years. $5-6 billion, success rate of 0.01%, 1 out of 10,000 molecules becoming a drug. Quantum computing can actually do all these different calculations and create drugs in milliseconds. Think about new materials, think about space exploration, science, everything that we are harnessing a lot of computing power and still don't get it. And we almost can't get it. Think about medicine, treatment, industry, logistics, everything that today we spend so much efforts, resources, and quantum computing can do instantly in nanoseconds. Everything is about to change.
You said that things are about to change. Sometimes these technologies, it always seems right around the corner, this new technology that's going to revolutionize the world. What makes you so confident that we are actually on the edge of this kind of technology changing everything?
So yes, the joke with quantum computing was that for the last 30 years, it's 30 years away. Not anymore. The thing that really changed in the last 2 to 3 years is, surprise, surprise, AI. Now that we have AI, which gives us the tool to do the very complex calculations and science behind quantum computing, we started to see leapfrog after leapfrog after leapfrog. It's so interesting to see how those two technologies are actually combining. AI is feeding into the development of quantum computing, and leapfrog the development and the research and the physics and the mathematics behind it. While once we get to this point of quantum advantage, this will feed back to the AI machines, and AI will get to a completely different level thanks to quantum computing. So no longer the 30 years away, it's around the corner.
So if I'm Merck or Pfizer and I'm trying to develop new drugs, do I go out and buy a quantum computer at some point, or do I lease something, or how does this model work?
I don't think that we'll have quantum computing to buy. This is such a radical technology that I do believe that we're going to have few thousands of them at most on the planet, probably mostly owned by governments, and we'll need cooperation. So those companies that you mentioned, other companies that could use quantum computing for future advances, will have to cooperate with the developers, with governments. It's going to be almost impossible to own your own one. I said it's not going to sit on our desk, it's not going to sit in our room, in our lab. This is something very, very different. You can access today, by the way, today you can access some of those by the cloud, though on a very, very low level, but already today you can start doing it.
We've talked about healthcare as a sector already, but I'm wondering how you see the potential changes in other sectors. What could people look forward to?
So people should look to basically everything in every aspect of our life, from logistics, transportations, material thing. We can generate the next generation of batteries. We can think about diseases. We can think about materials, weather calculations, which is one of the most complex things in the world. Today, by the way, we spend $12 billion every day to calculate the weather.
Wow.
And we still get it 70% accurate for 48 hours in advance. Quantum computing can actually calculate the weather very long term, 100%. Think about encryption. And this is probably one of the most interesting things over here. Quantum is the end of encryption. Current encryption, which is based on the Shor's algorithm, to run the Shor's algorithm, not going to go into the mathematics behind it, classical computers can't do it, or almost impossible to do that today. Even supercomputers, it's not an issue for quantum computing.
So this is going to be a problem for businesses as well when it comes to trade secrets, things like that.
But on the other hand, it's going to have quantum encryption, which is unhackable, completely unhackable by definition. So from one side, you say, yes, this is going to replace and actually can hack everything. Yeah. This is going to replace all of the current encryption methods. But on the other side, we will have for the first time encryption, which is going to take it to a level that cannot be broken anymimore.
Right. When we were talking about this Google News earlier, you seemed not as impressed maybe as some of the other headlines are making it seem. It seems like this might be a little bit of a tick-tock as we're moving through milestones. Looking forward, what are the milestones you're looking for that's going to tell you, okay, we've arrived?
So we are looking for 2 milestones, really. And I am excited about this announcement. But as I said, we are following this industry for quite some time now, and we see it building block after block after block. The announcement was very important, but it just shows you that it's still progressing. There are 2 milestones that we are waiting. The first one is what we call quantum advantage, that will have functioning quantum computing, that the qubits, again, I don't want to go into the technology itself, but they can work efficiently enough, better than classical computer. But this is not the holy grail. Although this is a big market, it's a market which already have application, and this is, by the way, companies are already talking about the next 1 or 2 years. That's roughly about it. The real holy grail is quantum supremacy, that will have computers that can do calculations that no classical computer can be. The estimates in the market are talking somewhere around 2030. We're talking about systems that the number in the market and differentiate between different companies is roughly 1 million qubits with no noises that can work together. As I said, there are other technologies which are talking about different sets and different numbers. And this is where this is happening. Everything is changing. The interesting thing is that this timeline is getting shorter and shorter all the time. So when we started to do the work around quantum computing, that was 2035. A couple of months ago, 2032. Now talking about 2030. The timeline is getting shorter and shorter.
When I hear the word quantum supremacy, that sounds a bit nefarious or incredibly advantageous if you're that company. Are we talking about single companies or alliances of companies who are going to bring this forth? And where are they coming from? Is this from US, from China? What are we looking at?
So it's a combination of two things. So yes, the big, some of the Mag 7 are involved, some private companies are involved in this project, and each and every one of them have different projects.
And this is Magnificent Seven. This is the biggest tech companies you're talking about.
Yes, and few other ones which are in the same ecosystem. Same different technologies. Everyone have their own technologies, and the beauty about it, by the way, that if one technology will work, it doesn't mean that the others won't work. So it's actually quite interesting. But governments are investing so much in that now. Up to a couple of months ago, the total investments in the market was roughly $40 billion on a government level, while 38% of this number coming from China. China is by far the leader today. The second one is, interesting enough, is Europe. Europe is well ahead, and I'll explain in a second. There's a very interesting reason why. And US is only number 3 at around 17-18% of total governmental investments. Well, the US is really relying on the private market.
Imagine.
The reason why Europe is investing so much in quantum computing, because if you think about it, quantum computing is the first technology in human history that can reset everything, that can bring us all back to square one. We all understand right now that Europe is behind technological versus the US and versus China. Trying to catch up, but almost impossible. US control the semiconductors, the AI models, everything that is really, that is setting technology, 5G and everything around that.
Right.
Well, if you have quantum computing, you can redesign semis. You can redesign everything. So there is a reason why Europe is chasing this technology, which can bring it back to an edge.
But just the fact that Europe is putting a lot of public money into this doesn't mean that it can match up to the deep pockets in the US when we talk about private money. Are you saying that Europe actually has a chance to really excel in this area?
First of all, yes, and there's enough private companies also that are involved, really supported by European governments all over the continent. And yes, it could be a binary game. As I said, the interesting thing about it is if one will work, it doesn't mean that the others won't work. They can always get there. Europe is trying their best and working very, very hard to get a head start on that one.
I want to ask you about Q Day, because this does sound like it could be out of a Star Trek episode or something, but how should businesses and the average viewer be thinking about this day?
It's a big question, because I'm a big believer that this is, and I know I'm probably saying big things here, it's the fire moment of humanity. It's you asking the Neanderthals, before they got fire, how your life are going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years after that. Everything is about to change, from encryption to materials to our life to planning, everything. Now, of course, it's taking time. It's not overnight. But this is such a radical technology. Think about it. If you would ask me in November 2022, when AI is going to come and be here, what do you think of the real application? Now, AI has been a technology that's been with us since 1968. And most of us did not imagine where we are today with agentic AI and reasoning AI and smart models that can do everything for us and leapfrogging in terms of technology. This is the same thing with quantum. Quantum is such a radical technology. And the interaction with other technology is so strong that I'm a big believer that everything is about to change.
You're obviously a big believer here. You're saying some pretty big things. What are the possible hurdles in the road? What are some areas where maybe we've overassessed and we haven't gotten it right, or that we just don't understand that there are actually costs that may be prohibitive?
So I think that the number one risk is technology. This is such a complicated technology that I have to be honest, most of us don't understand it yet. Even the researchers that are working on it don't really understand how the quantum level works. It works on ways of superpositions and entanglement and qubits that are way beyond the normal physics that we understand. It's a completely new physics. Quantum mechanics is so different to what we do right now. For me, this is probably the main barrier right now to get it right. Because interestingly enough, we can get it right now. But the problem is that because we don't understand these systems, and I will even complicate more, those systems have to be ununderstood to work. They have to be in uncertainty to work all the time. It is almost impossible in terms of the human brain. But we are heading there. We are definitely heading there.
I want to broaden out and look at the U.S. economy a little bit. The government shutdown has meant that companies are making moves without any official economic data from the government. At what point are you going to potentially start to feel worried about companies making so many big moves in the dark?
I think that it's a matter of time up until governments are going to come back, and I know there's some kind of companies I don't know there's some uncertainty out there, and companies do not work good in uncertain terms over time. Eventually, it's a system that feeds each other all the time. Governments have to rely on the private sectors and vice versa. I don't see this shutdown taking over time, because eventually the entire U.S. economy is based on that. So I do see the government intervention coming back and giving the information back. It's just a matter of time. Otherwise, it's a lose-lose situation for everybody.
But it's been over 2 weeks now of government shutdown. I guess what I'm asking is there a point in time where we've just been making too many moves in the dark and now this becomes a problem? Is it 3 weeks, a month? At what point is the government shutdown becoming a problem for businesses?
We don't know how to assess exactly in the amount of time, but of course, the longer it takes, it's not helping anyone, especially not companies. Ideally, this should end up, but I still think that the government is involved. Going back to the quantum question that you, just as an example, so today it was all over the press that maybe the U.S. administration is actually thinking about investing in the quantum field. So, although there's a shutdown, the government is actually still working.
Speaking of sort of these big, high-profile technologies like quantum computing, how do you look at the AI, what's going right now with AI investment? This is the question that everyone's asking. Is this a bubble? Is this not a bubble? What's your take?
It's not. I don't think it's a bubble. I do believe that we're in an early stage and some investments are going to be rationalized over time, but we do need these data centers. We do need those semiconductors. We do need those resources right now. We're in the edge that AI is now start to get to everything. And every company is starting to use it and understanding how to use it. And we see more and more efficiency gains, agentic AI. We're seeing actually AI being used in research, in science, in a lot of other stuff as well. So I don't think that it's overhyped. I actually think that governments and countries that are investing right now will have an edge, even if their free cash flow, if their capex investments are going down right now, the capex are going up, free cash flow is going down, it's still going to be a situation that if I'm not investing today, and if I'm not compromising today my short-term returns to a long-term gain, I'm just not going to be around.
I want to ask you, I want to stay with this hype for a second because you've sparked something in my brain here. Because there were a lot of warning signs, one could say hype from economists prior to the Trump 2.0 inauguration, that tariffs would be just like big bad, right? That was the framing that we were getting from all sorts of experts. But we've not really seen the collapse. We've not seen the house fall down. So I'm wondering, are people crying wolf, or what do you make of the fact?
I don't think crying wolf. I think that people are missing the big picture over here. I am a big believer that this whole trade war, the tariff regime, everything around that was aimed to one very specific reason. It's going back to the AI question that we talked about. We live in a world of an arm race, of AI arm race right now between US and China. And US is trying to get back all the IP, the brains, the human capital that you need, the investments, everything back. And the tariffs were the #1 tool to bring it back.
Right.
We are in a complete arm race between US and China. Don't think about East and West anymore. Think about a ChatGPT block versus a DeepSeek block. That's how you should start looking at the world going forward. And this is the whole tariff, this whole thing, was really aimed for that. So I do think there was a master plan behind it.
Stepping back, I'm wondering, what market trends do you see shaping the US economy right now?
So definitely the investment in technology, but the other investment that we should start thinking about is this technology is requiring a lot of infrastructure investments. And this is what's going to shape it right now, because we need more energy, a lot more energy. We need more water. Every 40 commands of those chats drinks 1 liter of water, and 40 commands is only what I do every day. So you can imagine how many commands are there per day which are consuming water. We need more bandwidth. AI generating a lot of data that mobile networks can't support it anymore. We need to upgrade all of them. We need more data centers. We need a new grid. We need all this infrastructure. So for me, it's going to be technology, investment, infrastructure, that is definitely going to benefit over here. And as also robotics, industrial, because as I said before that, the US is trying to bring back a lot of the operation back home everywhere in the world. So we are fine-tuning globalization. I don't think that's the end of globalization. I think we are fine-tuning it, or the reshoring. But that is very positive for industrial, very positive for robotics, for automation.
I'm wondering then, do you see the U.S. as having access to enough of the hardware? I'm thinking of something as simple as the pipes to bring the water or the wires to bring the electricity, not to mention the data centers. I see the U.S. making a lot of, I don't want to say enemies, but maybe less good friends with some of these tariffs. Are they going to be able to access the materials needed to make these physical things to power the future?
I think eventually we're an open economy, and we are an economy that competition and price and everything has the right price and everything has the right way to look at it. U.S. needs it. And when U.S. needs it, it will pay. And so it will have a lot of those things are being developed in Southeast Asia. Europe is actually quite strong in data centers equipment. So you will see the U.S. harnessing and eventually paying for that. We're in a free economy. There's a need. There will be a price.
Haim Israel, Bank of America, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to Haim Israel for his insights there. And of course, if you have a question or a comment, please leave it on the feed where you're listening to this. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, just go into the comments below this video and leave it for us right there. We'll be sure to get you the best answer that we can.
You know, Kassandra, when we talk about quantum computing, this is one of a handful of kind of deep tech areas. Think of AI, robotics, things like that. These really kind of moonshot almost technologies that when they succeed, companies really pay off. But it can actually change societies as well.
Yeah, it sounds kind of sci-fi-y,
That's
but
right.
There's always a catch with these things.
There is, of course, always a catch, and it's funding. You know, Haim talked about this a little bit, but funding is a real problem. And I actually talked with someone who's really addressing this from the European side, and that is Nadia Calviño. She's president of the European Investment Bank. Take a listen to what she told me about trying to get Europe ready for funding these big moonshot technologies.
Funding, finance is a big part of it, because indeed in Europe we have excellent research centers, universities, excellent talent. Actually, the number of startups created in Europe every year is comparable to the US. But when they need to grow, they lack two things. They lack an integrated market. So the fragmentation of the 27 member states is hindering the possibility for them to exploit the economies of scale as compared to having access to the whole US market. And then secondly, they lack capital. When they need to raise 300, 400 million euros, they need to go to the other side of the Atlantic because capital markets are larger there.
We know that when we look at funding and when we look at the kind of startups that Europe would like to see really prosper here, those include a lot of deep tech, what we'd call deep tech startups. These may be in areas like AI, quantum computing, robotics. Is it then even harder to find that funding and that financing? Because these are very capital intensive areas, is that right?
These are capital intensive and risky areas. That's by definition what a startup is. But in the last years, we have made great progress. Just to talk about what we're doing from the European Investment Bank, our subsidiary, the European Investment Fund, has been supporting and mobilizing private investment into a very big number of startups. And we have actually funded 9 unicorns, you know, these companies that are able to raise 1 billion euros in capital. And that is really remarkable. Only in the last years, 3 of them here in Germany. So it's very important that we continue to support these instruments that mobilize public and private investment, that we nurture the European ecosystem of investment funds, venture funds, that are providing capital to these companies, and that we scale up these successful instruments going forward.
We know that, as you mentioned, a lot of these startups then go abroad, especially for late-stage financing. A couple of years ago, I talked with someone at Marvel Fusion. This is a fusion startup in Munich. They were building a laboratory in Colorado in the US because that's where they could find money for it. Again, a very capital-intensive startup. How do you reach that level of funding? Does it take essentially an overhaul of rules, an overhaul of what we call the capital markets here in the EU? In other words, removing all of those boundaries to create a kind of common market like in the US.
Well, obviously, creating a common market, a really integrated capital market, would make a very big difference because the savings are here. Europe is a savings-rich continent. But that money is going to the US to invest maybe in companies that ultimately are buying European startups. That's why we need to really stop being the incubator of the world and benefit from those growth companies that can be leaders in areas, not only the ones you're mentioning, like deep tech, also health tech. The area of health is one where Europe is a leader at world level. So we need to continue to have that leadership, or the area of green technologies, whether it is new fuels, whether it is decarbonization of heavy industry or energy efficiency for SMEs. We need to continue to lead those technologies of the future, and that requires capital investment and an integrated market.
But is deep tech not a special priority when you look at the competitive nature with China, with the US? These are key technologies which are going to have to also come out of Europe in some level. How much urgency is there in your job to basically make sure that these are receiving the funding that they're needing, that it's coming to European startups?
Well, we need to look at different areas because technological developments are happening at a very fast pace in all these areas. So indeed, the key digital infrastructures and the deep tech is a very important area, but likewise, the integration of these new technologies, for example, artificial intelligence, into our companies. And fortunately, European companies are investing in digitalization and the integration of artificial intelligence. And that is going to be the main source of productivity gains, driving growth in the coming years. So we have to pay attention to those basic industries, but also the integration of new technologies in those areas where Europe is a leader, a world leader.
How hard is it to create something like a capital union? I want to go back to this because you just had a panel with Henry Kravis, a legend of private equity from the US. He said essentially the same thing. There needs to be a kind of broader capital union across Europe. You hear this a lot. Politically, it's very difficult. How critical is a capital union for the development of technology that's necessary here in Europe? Is it fundamental?
Indeed, it is absolutely essential that we move ahead in deepening our integration and creating large capital markets. Like, it is also quite urgent to develop pan-European capabilities in the area of security and defense, because these are areas where we are too dependent on the US in particular. So we should move ahead, but it's not easy because the visions are very different when we're talking about a large country like Germany, or vis-a-vis a very small specialized capital market player like Luxembourg. You also have home and host countries for the large European banks. You have different economic environments in the different countries. So it is complicated, like it is in the area of security and defense, but we absolutely need to overcome these national barriers and move towards a pan-European integrated market.
Your job is to really drive a lot of investment in EU priorities. How important for you is it that a lot of that risk capital comes from Europe itself, especially in some of these maybe more sensitive areas like AI, like strategic tech?
Mm-hmm. Indeed, you nailed it. What we are trying to create is a European ecosystem of investment funds that can channel those savings into productive investments in the EU, because we need to ensure that we have a European capability to develop and invest in startups and scale-ups and large companies, the necessary investments for Europe going forward. We cannot continue to depend, as I was saying a moment ago, on the US, whether it is in the area of defense or in the area of capital markets.
Is there, outside of the policy issues here and outside of the regulatory issues, is there also a kind of risk aversion in Europe that concerns you? We talk about that a lot in Germany. We hear about it a lot.
Yeah.
You mentioned the savings, tremendous amount of savings across Europe. A lot of it is in banks. How do you see a risk aversion, first of all, and how do you overcome it?
Well, obviously, large institutional investors are by definition risk averse. When we're talking about pension funds or insurance companies, they need to have a very prudent investment strategy. But that should also allow for them to have a small percentage of those investments in areas which are riskier. Only by mobilizing a very small share of their portfolios, that would already make a very big difference in terms of capital mobilization. And then there's another key area, of course, which is the returns. Investors are looking for good returns. We need to make sure that Europe is profitable as an investment proposition. Our approach from the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund is that Europe is indeed a profitable proposition, but we need to make sure that that is the case by removing obstacles and barriers and providing an integrated market.
We've talked a little bit about deep tech, but tell me, how important is defense right now in your line of work? That's a massive area of growth right now, is it not?
It is, and it is unfortunate. Of course, I would very much like that we wouldn't have this as one of our top 3 priorities. But since I became president of the European Investment Bank in January 2024, I had a clear view that we needed to step up our support to Europe's security and defense capabilities. We've moved very fast and very much, so that this year, 2025, I am quite confident that we're going to reach 3.5% of our investments devoted to security and defense. We have a very good pipeline, more than 30 flagship projects in this area. So the market is moving, things are moving in Europe. And the sooner we become independent in this area, the better, the stronger we will be able to play also our strengths, whether it is technology, whether it is economy or trade. So going forward, I expect that this trend will continue and we will have even higher investment levels in 2026. But what's really important is that we move from the national approach, we move to a pan-European approach, so that we have standard models, that we bring together public and private investors, and that we mobilize a real European capability.
How optimistic are you looking ahead? We talk about a lot of issues that need to be solved at a political level, honestly, probably above your level, when it comes to removing regulations, hurdles across the EU. How optimistic are you?
I see strong determination. I think that the partnership between Germany and France is very important. And of course, there's a core of other countries, whether it is Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, Poland, and others. They need to get together to have a clear vision about where we're heading and determination, I think, to make clear steps in the right direction. I am very attentive to what happens today in the meeting of the leaders, the European Council, and I hope that they will make important decisions so that we can see this determination and we can get things moving at the right pace.
All right, that's Nadia Calviño. She's president of the European Investment Bank. Nadia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Another big thanks there to Nadia Calviño for sitting down with us here on The Dip.
What I really appreciated about that conversation that you had with Nadia, Steve, was that there was this really frank discussion about how the EU is falling behind, and it blew my mind. Because she put this into perspective that when you're talking about new startups, the kind of baby startups, that when you look at the EU compared to the US, that they're comparable.
Yeah, they are in some ways, right? At the very earliest stages, you see that many startups can take place, they can get early stage funding. What we've always heard about time and time again through our reporting here is that it's really that late stage, deep pocket area where European startups really struggle.
Now, one story we've been keeping an eye on is the American involvement in the 20-point Trump Gaza Peace Plan.
There's a lot of reconstruction that's needed, and that means not only capital, but support from big donors such as the U.S.
To dig into this more, I spoke to our DW correspondent Ben Fajzullin. Ben, thanks for joining us. When we're talking about how much aid is needed, how much is needed, and how much of that is going to be American?
The figure's put at $70 billion at the moment. It's a vague figure, like the plan itself, and it could be much more. It's most likely to be much more. I can give you an example because with the reconstruction that's going on at the moment, or that's slated to go on, there has to be a whole lot of rubble removed from Gaza. Basically, the entire territory has been reduced, 90%, they say, to rubble. Bombs have to be removed before that even happens. And that alone will cost $500 million, estimated by Halo, a group that comes in and removes those munitions. That's just one group that's doing that job. You've also got the United Nations Mine Action Service and other organizations and humanitarian organizations which to operate and distribute aid also need a safe environment. So for people returning to their homes, wanting to rebuild, they're going to have to watch out. It's a dangerous time. And this is going to cost a lot more than what the experts are saying right now. You've got a territory that has no water, no electricity. It's a small strip, as it's called, but it is densely populated. And this is going to be difficult at any time. War could break out. So who's going to pay these funds? That's a very good question. And how much will come from America? A very good question as well. No one knows. But America is one of the big donors and is expected to be in on this. The Chinese have shown interest in the past. They've been or had been putting together a reconstruction plan with the Egyptians. They're keen to show themselves champions for the Palestinian cause. That sort of fits in with their narrative. They say Gaza belongs to the people of Palestine. They also believe that Taiwan belongs to China. So it sort of fits in, if you know what I mean. They've been trying to take on a mediator role, but that has been basically pushed aside by the US and the Arab states, including the United Arab Emirates, and also the Saudis, according to Netanyahu, according to reports, are willing to pay this bill. It won't all come from them, but it is a drop in the bucket for the rich Arab states. And we will see US money. We will see some sort of EU involvement at the moment. We're hearing foreign ministers are meeting next week to discuss how they can be involved. But we've already got a plan, at least, from the US, even though it's vague, as I mentioned.
In this 20-point plan, there's a point about a special economic zone with, quote, preferred tariff and access rates. What do we know about this plan?
Not much as well, Cassandra. I'm sorry, but everything
No, that's
remains
how it
pretty
is.
much up in the air at the moment. It's a sweetener, obviously, to get investors involved. Investors are concerned. Countries are concerned, of course, that if they invest a whole heap of money and rebuild Gaza and then it's suddenly bombed the next week or month or year, then they're not going to get any returns on their investments, are they? When it comes to Gaza itself, what this plan does not have, and this is important, is granting economic sovereignty to the people of Gaza. At the moment, the Gazans are totally limited by Israel. I mean, they have opportunities. There's said to be oil and gas under both the West Bank and off Gaza. To a certain extent, there's a textiles industry and a food processing industry which would need to be rebuilt. There's also agricultural land which is too dangerous at the moment because of undetonated bombs. The UN is saying that it will take 25 years to restore that agricultural land because it's been stripped of trees, bushes. It faces desertification.
Wow.
Water has been contaminated by sewage. The territory really needs a lot of help, but what it needs is help in helping itself. So it needs security, first of all, a Palestinian police force, which is being trained at the moment by Egypt and Jordan, to back that up, an international stabilization force, which is laid out in the plan, but we don't know who's going to join that yet. And many countries are not keen on sending their people in because they're worried that Hamas could shoot to kill. They're also worried that Hamas is not going to disarm. And this is the trickiest part of this whole plan, that Trump wants economic and political reform in Gaza as a pathway to statehood, but that's not going to happen with Hamas. That's not part of the plan. And that really takes away the incentive from Hamas if it's not included politically. Their only security at the moment are their guns. So to disarm Hamas is the biggest challenge facing the region right now. And who will do that? I mean, the EU has said that, according to diplomats, it could be involved in the technicalities of that, in providing some sort of technical support, but not actually physically taking away those weapons.
You mentioned the West Bank, and that reminds me that the Palestinian Authority is mentioned in the peace plan. But why are they involved since they're not based in Gaza?
The PA was in control before. Its Fatah faction fell out with Hamas in a very violent way. The PA, though, is considered outdated, corrupt. There have been no elections held in 15 years. They have failed to find peace in the Middle East or statehood for the Palestinians. They're meant to be in charge of the West Bank, but are also failing to provide people protection from settler violence. So many question marks remain over their capabilities, but it looks like they're the only ones.
What is the state of the economies of the West Bank and Gaza? You did talk a little bit about Gaza already, but stepping back with these two territories, what is the state of their economies?
Yeah, Gaza is in ruins, as I mentioned. The West Bank had a lot of Palestinians, 200,000 approximately, working in Israel prior to the war. They are unemployed. They've been denied access since the Hamas terrorist attacks. And there is a lot of dependence on Israel, not just for work, but just getting places. It's very limited. For example, my Palestinian cameraman will turn up in the morning here in Jerusalem from East Jerusalem, but he could be half an hour late, an hour late because of checkpoints. There are new roads, highways, walls, fences, almost surrounding some Palestinian villages, some having been evacuated, a huge amount of money being put into outposts over the past 2 years, some 100 of them set up, and 26 new settlements, which are considered illegal under international law. The finance minister also putting funds aside and aiding settlers with ammunition, with guns, with all-terrain vehicles, night goggles, drones, to really put pressure on these Palestinians to leave their lands. And that is causing so much trouble in the West Bank, so much violence. We're seeing videos just this week of the olive harvest, which is the most important time of the year for Palestinians. They are being denied access to their lands. Some of them, where walls have been built by the Israelis, have hired land from neighbors to try to harvest something. But even there, the trees have been burnt, hacked to pieces, or they've been threatened with violence, or actually shot at, or beaten.
Ben, looking at Israel, what's the state of the economy there?
Well, the Israeli economy had shut down at the beginning of the war. When I flew in here, there was no one out on the streets. Of course, those Palestinian workers, 200,000 of them denied access. That also negatively affected Israel. So it's now started opening up its economy again. People are out on the streets again. Of course, under this ceasefire, there's a lot of optimism and skepticism. But as far as the economy goes, a whole heap of Indian, Chinese workers have been flown in to replace those Palestinians. That's denying the Palestinians work, but getting the Israeli economy going again. And it is a highly developed free market economy with a very strong tech sector, quantum computing, drones, AI. This war has been fought largely with AI systems. Its drones are exported around the world. Tourists are returning. And there are big investments from Jewish Russians, Dutch Christians, American evangelicals, who are also heavily invested in these settlements that are continued to be built in the West Bank.
Ben Fajzullin, DW correspondent in Jerusalem. Ben, thanks so much for joining The Dip. That's it for us this week on The Dip. You can like, you can subscribe, you can leave a question, or dare I say a comment on any of our videos, and we'll be sure to get you a response or an answer as soon as we can.
That's right, and we'll be back into your feeds on Tuesday. Until then, thanks for listening to
The Dip.